Hey everyone, this will be our complete training overview of a backhoe loader from pre-op to shutdown. We've gotten a lot of requests from people to kind of combine all of our individual videos into one longer format. So this will be that one longer format video. Check this out. Look in this description below, you'll see kind of different time stamps for the sections. The sections we'll start off with, the one is a pre-op inspection. Number two is gonna be our basic controls overview. Three will be more advanced skills. And fourth is our pre-op shutdown procedure for the backhoe loader. Okay, so this is how to conduct a pre-op inspection for a backhoe loader. Now, first and foremost, I tell everyone up front, I'm not an expert. I'm also not a diesel mechanic. I like to go over these because I like to show, especially new operators, that you don't need to be a diesel mechanic to do an overview, a pre-op inspection on a piece of equipment. A lot of it is just really basic items to be looking for. It's also one of the most important things I think to do before you operate any piece of equipment. So with that said, I'm gonna go into it. We've started testing having a handheld camera, which I can then kind of zoom in. I know we've got a lot of comments about people wanting to see exactly what we're looking at. So we've started using this. So I'll try and point out specific things as I see them. Now, my pre-ops, as you've seen in other videos, I break it down really in three sections. There is no right or wrong way. All I say is get in a routine and follow that routine. It doesn't matter what piece of equipment. My first is always my general walk around. I just do a visual. It's kind of my big picture to see if anything obvious, because sometimes we get so close, we kind of miss some of those big picture things just because we're focusing so tight on it. Second is the compartment check. That's where I am going to open up any compartments, get a little bit more in depth. And then my third and final is the operator's seat. Basically getting in the cab, do my final inspection there. So with that said, here's how I do my pre-op inspection. Okay, for my general walk around, again, starting wherever you start, I try and be consistent. I'm usually on the driver's, whatever the door, the cab is. But I'm starting top to bottom, left to right, looking for anything obvious with this backhoe loader. So if I see anything any damage, anything like that, but starting up front with the backhoe loader, I'm looking at the tires. You know, you're looking at tread wear on these. Is there any damage to the tires at all? Anything like that? Looking at the planetaries, the drive systems on the inside, making sure there's nothing loose, there's nothing leaking. But that's also then on the front, just looking overall inflation. Does it look properly inflated? And then you're also going to look and make sure all your lug nuts, everything's secured on there. You're looking to make sure all those are connected. And then the actual drive system, the planetary there, making sure there's no leaks. This is how you would check your oil level. We don't do that daily, but you can actually put that level and open that up to see the level of the fluid in there. But again, on a pre-op inspection, just checking basic overview of it. From there, I'm looking anywhere where there's a joint. I'm not only, I'm looking to make sure it looks greased appropriately, so you can see there's grease coming out of there, but I'm also checking all of the hydraulic hoses. Now, it's really important when these hoses, I've said this in other videos, don't ever grab these. They're under extremely high pressure, and it's very easy. If you were to break one of those, you'd really hurt yourself. So you're just looking if there's damage, if it's frayed, if it is bulging at all, anything like that, or if there's any leaks around any of those. So again, everything there, the exhaust stack I'm looking at up top, making sure it's intact, not cracked, not damaged, anything like that. Again, continuing. Same thing on the back, top, looking any damage, anything like that. And then the rear tire. So same thing, I'm looking for any damage, making sure it looks proper inflation on it. Sometimes you can catch anything on the tread if there's uneven tread wear or something you might want to call attention to. And then same thing, it's secured on there, there's no loose bolts, and then there's no leaks or anything from the drive system there in the center. Nothing obvious there. So continuing around the rear, again, I always start top to bottom, make sure there's no damage on the cab, the lights, everything like that. Coming down, your outriggers, making sure that your pads, usually outriggers have two different sides. One is for like asphalt or a hard surface, and you can actually flip these and use the other side if it's a softer kind of dirt. But making sure they're pins, I can see everything here. Everything is attached, secured in there. There's no damage, nothing like that on there. Everything's secured. I'm looking at the main place then where all the hydraulic lines pass through, and this is a good area that if you're gonna see an issue or anything like that, you're gonna look under there and you're gonna see leaking, damage, anything that kind of sticks out to you there. Hydraulic cylinders, any of the cylinders, you're looking at those to make sure that nothing looks, if there's a leak around the seal or anything like that, that's obvious. Any of these are things that you'd want to kind of investigate further. My boom lock is intact, looks secure, everything like that. And I'm kind of looking up along the back of the boom arm. Again, you follow those lines all the way up and seeing if there's any damage, anything like that. Making sure all the pins, everything is secured. I'm just, again, eyeballing these really quickly. You know, if one of these kind of cotter pins was out, that means that could work its way out. So you want to make sure all of those are secured. Same thing with grease. I'm kind of looking to see, noting if it looks like it needs grease at all. If there's not any, if it looks really dry, that might be something that you're going to want to address. Same thing, looking over the top, the lines, everything like that. And then while I'm around the back, I always like to look underneath my equipment. So this is where, if it's been parked for a while, you can see if there's any leaks or anything that might be underneath the cab of the equipment. Like this one, I can actually see there's a little bit of dripping water. It's actually water from the air conditioner because we were running it earlier, but just because you can tell where it's at. If it's under the engine is up front, that's where you'd see the leaks there. If it was directly under there, it'd be the hydraulic lines. You can also see the bottom lines, hydraulic lines there. So again, all these, there's a lot of moving parts. You want to make sure there's no leaks, none of the lines look damaged, anything like that. Same thing, pins on this side and the hoses. And again, on the top, starting up top, looking down, any damage to the cab. Same thing, outrigger on this side, making sure no damage. Continuing, again, this outrigger, looking at the pins, intact. Again, starting at the top, seeing no damage there. Same thing on the tire on this side. Looks properly inflated, no damage, nothing looks, you know, if there's sometimes you'll have a piece of rebar, something could stick in it and it's not completely, hasn't ruined the tire yet, so you want to catch those. Same thing, making sure it is, all the lug nuts are on, it's secured, no leaks. Again, continuing over. Obviously you want to make sure you have your mirrors intact, everything like that. When I'm on this side of the equipment, this is actually where you check the hydraulic fluid. So you want to look at that line, you should be in between those two lines. Continuing around the front, same thing with these cylinders. If I were to see any leaks or anything around that seal on any of the cylinders, you're looking for that. And again, same thing with all of these lines. Again, it's just a quick kind of glance over. Front tire, same thing, any damage to the tire, looks properly inflated, lug nuts are all on. Again, on the inside, making sure everything looks secure, there's no damage anything there. And then behind the bucket, again, kind of making sure all the connections, no pins are missing, nothing seems loose, properly greased, no damage that I can see. The main hydraulic lines that are going up for the bucket cylinder. While I'm up here, the radiator, if I can see if there's any damage to the grate there, anything like that I want to address. Once I'm on the front of the machine, looking at the, if there is any damage to the bucket, anything over that kind of sticks out on the bucket itself, but also the wear, any wear edge on this. So the front blade here, you know, this unbolts. This is what you use your cutting edge on this, and you want to make sure you catch that early. If this is worn down, you want to replace it before using, otherwise you're going to end up not only having to replace the edge, you're going to be doing some work on your bucket. But you can see you're always going to, on the corners, should always wear, generally they're going to wear faster than the centers, so you can see that but it looks proper on this machine. And then again, just looking on the front of the machine, seeing if you see any damage, anything sticks out at all. Looking at this side of the bucket then, again, all my primary lines are coming through there, no damage, everything looks secure, all the pins are in, it looks proper greasing levels in there. My quick attach is in there, I can see that hose in there, seeing if there's any damage. Again, just really, you don't have to be a diesel mechanic to see something that just, hey, this doesn't look right. Okay, so that's my first is general walk around. Again, I usually do it a lot quicker, but to point everything out. Okay, after the walk around, again, if I do this properly for mine at least, I do 2 full circles, because one is going to be the general walk around, then 2 is going to be compartments. So second is going to be compartments on the machine. Really on this one, there's a small battery compartment on this side, but generally it's the engine compartment. We're going to walk around the other side. Okay, and then really the compartment for the backhoe loader is just the engine compartment. So on the John Deere, hood release, I'll make sure you can see this, hood release right there, and flip this up. Now there are 2 different ways on the John Deere. This is a half open. You actually need to have the boom all the way up, locked out if you want to open this hood all the way. Generally for a pre-op, you can catch everything just by getting halfway up. So open up. While I'm up here though, before I get down, I'm just looking over the top of it. Seeing, again, I don't need to be a mechanic to see if something doesn't look right. I can also see the coolant tank right there. And it's tough maybe to see, but you can see on the side the level. I'll be able to show you on the other side too. That's one thing that's kind of tough to see when it's halfway open. But making sure it's coolant tank there. And then again, just looking bird's eye view, anything over the top here that looks like it might be damaged, leaking, anything like that. And then really the only thing for fluid check on the Backhoe loader, so you've got two different, you got a dipstick for the oil, and then this is for the transmission. Transmission on a Backhoe loader, you don't, I think John Deere recommends every 250 hours. We do it monthly, just because they're not like cars. They don't drive, you don't put that many miles on that transmission. So the engine oil though, you do want to check daily. Looking at that, making sure it's full. And then after that, just looking inside to see if there's anything that kind of sticks out. You don't have a clear sight glass for the fuel filter here, but you can drain out. There's a drain out to drain out if there's any water or sediment in the fuel filter. But again, looking at that, and then I can also see my radiator fan in here. So if you look in here, you can see the back of it, seeing if there's any damage, anything like that. I'm checking this side, I'm gonna check the other side. And then again, coming on this side, same thing. I'm just looking in to see if I see any damage, any loose, again, anything that just sticks out. I don't need to be a diesel mechanic to say, hey, that doesn't look right. Finally, on this one, I was telling you, on the John Deere's at least, if you push this down a little bit, I can actually see the marker. I don't know if you'll see it that well on this camera, but that's how you check the coolant. Obviously, very important to check the coolant. Okay, and that was the finish of the compartment check. The third and final is getting in the operator seat. Okay, so after I do all that, I just get in the operator's seat. First of all, I just make sure full range of motion on everything. Nothing feels, there's no damage to anything there. You can check the back too, your backhoe controls. Seeing if anything obvious is damage in here. And then after that, I go ahead with John Deere, start it up. Seeing if once I turn the battery on, making sure there's no warnings or indicators on here that would tell me not to start it. And then there we go. Now, honestly, here I'd like to start up and consider part of my pre-op. It's more audible. So is there anything that doesn't sound right to the machine? So that's the final thing I'm checking, is this listening. And then seeing as I go up if there's any indicators or anything like that. And then finally, I just check my fuel. So you can see fuel levels there, making sure nothing abnormal there, and we're good to go. Next step is once I actually go to digging or moving the machine, I'll do a cycle of the controls just to make sure they're operable. But that's how you do a pre-op inspection on a Backhoe loader. Okay, so basic controls on a backhoe is what we're gonna go over here. So first thing, as I say with anything, I'm not an expert in these. I'm gonna show you kind of what I've learned. But I just wanna go over the controls. I would say safety, obviously number one. We've already done the pre-op inspection. 3 points of contact getting in or out of equipment. Okay, first thing, seatbelt, put that on. You'll hear that in every one of my videos. Don't listen to the operators say don't wear your seatbelt. You're in a protection system, you gotta be secure to it. You don't wanna throw yourself out of these things if you were to roll it. So after that, we're gonna start this thing. Now we're in a John Deere 310 SL. Big shout out to RDO Equipment. They actually provided us the backhoe for these videos. Now when we're in it, first thing we're gonna do, and we have a handheld camera. We're trying a little bit something different here. We've had a lot of people say they want to see some of the controls. So if you can't see them there, I'm gonna hold a camera here and try to show you some. So on these, one click turns them on. They're keyless for the John Deeres. And then I hold that to start it. Now, what I'll say, we're gonna go over this John Deere 310. Backhoes are relatively similar, so whether or not we go over this one or another one, they're going to be pretty similar. So, but we'll go over these controls. Now, first thing you always notice, and again, on these displays, very similar, they cross over from skids. John Deere keeps it pretty consistent, which is what I really like between their different pieces. But we have the parking brake right there. It's going to always start as on. If we did want to stop it right there, but ultimately I'm looking, I got the parking brake symbol right there. That means this machine will not go anywhere with that on. So that's obviously always really important. Now, when you come into this thing, first thing, this is a steering wheel that you're going to go up and down with, and then if I need to adjust my seat, usually you're going to curl those down so you have a little better, it's right there in front of you. Now with these, backhoes are, again, I don't think they're really good at any one thing. They're kind of used for a lot of different purposes, but they're not, some people use them in a lot of different areas, different markets, but they're not real popular in the Midwest. But they really are a combination of kind of a front-end loader or an excavator. And I think they don't do either one really well, but the fact that it's one machine does both, it can be handy, so you should know how to operate them. So with that said, I'm going to go over some of the basic just controls here, and I'll use my handheld camera to kind of show you some of these things. On the control panel, we already kind of went over everything there, at least for the starting. Other stuff you're not necessarily going to need here. There's a disconnect for if there's a quick attach on them. Your hazard lights, your eco is an eco mode it has on them, lighting, auxiliary hydraulics if you were to have it on there. This changes your control pattern, whether you're running ISO or SAE or backhoe controls. I always keep ISO, a lot of people call them cat controls, recommend those. Unlock our auxiliary hydraulics. Some of these, this is our ride control. That if you turn that on, it'll make your much smoother ride. Some of these aren't actives, like this one doesn't have an auto, this will be an automatic transmission, but it's not on there that way. So, and then you got your menu. Below that, this is your four-wheel drive. It's a mechanical that turns on the front. And then you've got wipers and air conditioning controls there. So that's all of there. Then outside on the steering, we're going to go over our right joystick in a sec. It's our boom and bucket controls. On the steering, you've got lights here, turn signals, and then your shifters over here. So you got forward, neutral, reverse, and then these are your speed settings on there. Outside of that, you got your foot pedals, two brakes that are basically these. You can flip that little lever up, and you can do either a right or a left. So the cool thing about backhoes, a lot of times I'll use it for snow plowing. If you do that, you can disconnect. If you want to help turn, you just push down the left brake, it would turn that machine to the left. So I can help, but very rarely do I see that used. And then we got our throttle right there on that side. I'm not going to go over, I'll go over the back controls, the backhoe, when we spin the seat around. So we're just going to go over the front for right now. Now, with that said, our boom and bucket controls. If I pull back on this, it's going to raise the bucket up. Again, very similar. These are going to be similar to a skid steer, front end loader, any piece like that. So up right there, right hand right, opens the bucket. Right hand left, closes the bucket. And then right hand forward is going to bring it back down. So that's the front. Then my shifter, you can either use, I like to use just either one foot or the other. It depends. Some people do the 2 feet on it. It really is personal preference. There's no right or wrong on that. But then all we would do, we're going to take the parking brake off. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by just doing the front. We're going to drive over to an area where we just take a few scoops and show you those controls. Then we're going to spin around and show you the backhoe portion. Parking brake off. Shifter. Now when I was driving there, if you saw I was in 2, I can flip that speed one way or the other. But I can basically, whatever speed you're in, it's going to automatically start at that lowest speed and it'll work its way. But you generally see us have the D there, that'll flip through automatically on there. But if you're going to scoop, things like that, usually I'm in 2 is a good indicator there. Now, I am going to find a spot to scoop over here. Okay, now just to use the front here, and I'm not going to go, we're in a very large gravel pile. Just looking at it, we've been on this pile before, but you generally want to be careful how tall this thing's well above my machine. So I'm going to grab some here at the beginning, but you want to be careful. Any of that stuff, that whole wall can collapse onto the machine, so you definitely don't want that. But with this, I'm just going to grab some material right here at the base of it. So if I go in forward here, generally you're just going to lower that all the way down and get your bucket flat. Now the only way you can really tell, and the same as on a wheel loader, I'll kind of show on the camera, if you can see that top line, that matches the bucket angle at the bottom, the blade angle. So I can't obviously go in like that, but I also, if I have it down too much, I'm actually creating a downward slope. So you can't see the front. So it's really important that you're making sure you're flat to the ground like that. And then all you're doing is you're driving into it. Now this is where to get a really full scoop. You're driving in. If you start pulling back in the boom while you're driving in, what you're doing is you're putting downward pressure on the front axle. So that's going to give you more power to drive into that. So that's why you kind of want to be pulling both at the same time. It's kind of an up and in, up and in, up and in. So I'm trying to do both to get a really full bucket. And there we go, and then I'm backing up. Watching where you're going. Yeah, and I didn't get super aggressive on this one just because of that large pile in front of me. I really don't want to be manipulating that too much. So, and then after that, if I want to dump, let's say same spot, raising it up. You'll see these things kind of have that auto level function. What you've seen on other machines that'll kind of curl it away from you, which is good because you don't want to, these won't actually let you curl it over, but raise it up. Once I'm at the base, my tires are at the base, that's where I'm going to be dumping. And a lot of times you can shake that bucket a little bit and make sure you clear everything out. Watch where you're reversing. Again, you've got mirrors on this up above you. I'll bring it down, do it one more time. The key again is trying to be flat to the ground when you're going into that. So as I'm driving, you're trying to also avoid spinning your tires at all. And then backing up with it. Now when you're traveling with these, always being low and tight to the ground. You never want to have this up very high. The higher you, backhoes are extremely top heavy. So if I'm driving around, anything above your hood, this machine is a lot less stable. So this is where it is a lot easier to get in a lot of trouble with a backhoe when you're up high like that. So generally you want to be low and tight to the ground and try not to dump all your material when I'm coming back down. I'm going to dump that. And then the final piece, actually, with me actually dumping some of that, I can drop this down. These have a blade that floats, just like you've seen in the other equipment. Generally, you can either be flat or have the blade at an angle. I'm going to go to an angle here. If I set it down there and if I take this right joystick and just push it all the forward, it locks forward. And then I'm going in reverse. And you'll see I can see behind, and I'll use the camera here because it's tough to see off the side. I can see basically right behind the blade there. And it'll kind of float the blade. I'll go right through that. And then at the end of that, I'm just, instead of just pulling straight back on that right hand, I'm slowly raising it so I don't leave a big pile of dirt. And then there we go, and curl it back in. Okay, we're gonna go back over to our side so I can show you the back of the machine. So again, I can shift on the fly on these. So some will have a transmission, an older backhoe will. These all are, shift on the fly, so I can flip it to 3 right there, and it'll go faster. Pretty obvious. Okay, so first thing, we put it in neutral. I'm gonna set that bucket flat on the ground. Now, generally, I recommend flat or just barely touching it. When I spin around, I'm actually going to raise up the back end. It's going to put a little downward pressure. The other option, if you're in really soft area, you got concerned about being pulled, and some people will just do this anyways. I don't think this is right or wrong, but some people will actually drive in, spin that open, and do it like that, because it actually puts the blade into the ground. Again, I don't generally will do that unless I'm afraid I'm going to get pulled, but usually just flat's fine. Set it down flat. Like that. Okay, I'm in neutral. I generally recommend putting the parking brake on. We'll go over some in the next video. We'll talk about if you leave it in neutral, I can kind of push your machine, but I'm going to put it in park right now, and then I'm good to go. Then flipping that steering wheel out of the way, and then there is a little lever right here. That's how I'm going to flip around. So I'm going to flip this around and we're gonna move our cameras around so we can see the back of the machine. Okay, now spinning around. So the backhoe controls on the back. Again, it's an excavator arm. So if you know how to run, again, we're going to do standard ISO controls. And I'll go over that in a moment. Typically, these are pilot controls, meaning they'll pull back to me. So a lot of the newer machines will have that. Some will have levers in the front that are old school backhoe controls. I shouldn't say old school because a lot of people use them that. The newer machines will have this because it also changes pattern. So you generally, what you'll do is you pull these back to you. So that once I pull those back, I can't activate them any other way. And there's a switch then, and I'm going to show you right here on the John Deere. That's an unlock switch. Now, before you do that, we got to drop our jack. So you'll see there's basically two right there. So if I push these forward, they're going to bring them. You can bring them both down at the same time, and you're basically going until you feel a little bit of downward pressure, and then you're just trying to. Getting the wheels off the ground just a hair is good or fine. Some people will keep the wheels on the ground. Really up to you. What you don't want to do is I don't want to keep jacking this thing up. The higher I go, the higher my center of gravity. So you just want to be firm on the ground, but you don't want to be all the way as high as you can go. And that also will push my front end in the ground a little bit there. Now, after that, again, I've got to unlock my controls there. I click that and I can actually see once I do that on my control that I've got my joystick activated, and then I've got my manual throttle here. So usually you're going to want to ramp up your throttle a little bit when you're doing that. So, and then you've got your boom lock on these. So whenever you're traveling, you want these boom locked. So with that, this lever in the center here is our boom lock lever right there. So you'll see I got to pull back on my right hand to pull pressure, and you'll see that little thing pop up there. And I'll do that again with the camera. Let me get the handheld one. So you'll see that little boom lock there is if I'm in there right there, it's locked and I can push it forward. If I pull back on that and then pull that up, I can go forward a little bit and I'll be out of that. So then my boom's not locked anymore. Now outside of that, I'm unlocked. Now with this, the controls, right is your boom and bucket, left is your stick and swing. Now I'm going to extend this away from me first. So this is your sting or stick or dipper, some people call it, in and out like that. Just like a standard, I'm in ISO standard excavator controls. And then left and right is my swing, one way or the other, like that. And then my right joystick is boom and bucket. So if I go forward, I'm going to bring the boom down, pull back, bring the boom up. No different than a standard excavator ISO controls. Right is open the bucket, left is close the bucket. So standard controls there. This is they call it an extend-a-hoe. Basically makes that stick longer. With that, I'm going to show you this foot pedal down here. So right there is how I'm going to extend that. So if I push that forward, extend out, push back on that. Oh, hey, cool Ariat boots right there. Didn't even mean to get that in, but there you go. They are pretty. I got some cool boots from them. I love their work boots are amazing. So, so that's all the controls there. Now to dig a hole, I am just going to extend out. Generally, I'm going to extend that thing as far as it'll go. So I'm going to reach out. I kind of look at that extend-a-hoe as really being used more for transport because I can dig all the way almost right up to me. So you might as well go with your max reach. Now, here's the biggest challenge with the backhoe. If you're trenching, you generally want to do it in line because you're going to try and push your machine forward. But you'll see it's really difficult to see my bucket unless I go left or right to see that thing. But all I'm doing is going down, and then you're basically shaving, slicing off a corner here. So this is where I'm pulling in, curling the bucket. You want to try and get those teeth horizontal to slice through the ground there. Now, new operators, I know you've seen me say this. Don't worry about doing multiple motions at once. Just get used to the controls. So I'm going to raise this up. Usually you want to go over 2 feet or so from your pile or from your trench to dump, and I'm going to open. For a new operator, if you're just training, sometimes the easiest thing to do, and this is not how you'll do when you're doing this regularly, go down one hand in one motion at a time. Right hand right hand left, right hand back. Now again, I know you're not going to do that mainly because if there's utilities, you always want to dig in layers. However, if you're brand new to this, I just want you to learn the controls. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with doing multiple motions. And then my left dumps it. You'll see, again, the proper way then is all I'm doing. You'll see how these things shake. Again, they're not great at any one thing, but I can shave layers off here. And I'm just trying to get maybe 6 inches off the ground. Not a beautiful trench. We'll go over trenching in the next video. But again, showing you basically I have them all the way extended with the Extendo. I can pull it up to get a little bit closer, but it also, trying to manage your foot control and doing all that same, it's fairly challenging. So that's how to use those controls. Finally, backfilling with a backhoe. Again, if you can scrape up just a little bit without creating a new hole, kind of drag it over. They don't necessarily recommend using this. So if I go like this and use the side of this bucket, not great for the machine. It's not designed to go laterally, but if you're just talking about finished grade, sometimes you can just slide through that and you'll get it kind of back to grade there. So basic controls there. Now the key here to finish with this back is retracting it all the way. You have to have that all the way in before you can travel with this thing. And then you're just pulling this bucket, curling it all the way, pulling the stick all the way in. Unless if you have a quick attach, you might have issues with curling it all the way in, but not usually. But just be careful. If you know you're too close to that thing, you might scrape it. And then always storing that thing, again, locking it. So I'm pulling that up. Before I come all the way, and you'll see the John Deere there. I have to go down a little bit. Pulling back on that to go up. So you'll see that little lever came up. And then pulling back on the right. Dropping it in. Once you're dropped in, just go down like that to lock it in. Now, this is travel mode, straight line. I highly recommend that. Some people, if you try and go sideways like this, you're just moving your center of gravity over. It makes no sense to do it. It makes you shorter, but it's actually less stable. So generally you want to be in line. This is transport mode. And then when you're done there, all you're doing is pulling your jacks gently down. Pull them all the way up. I do recommend at the end, be careful. If you have dirt on there, sometimes I've slammed these things so hard. And then there we go. And then from there, turning throttle down, you can push these away from you. We'll lock them out. I saw actually the symbol. I'll see the lockout go there, and then I can spin them back around. So for this, I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna park the machine and get on out. Okay, so this section will be, we'll call it our advanced skills. It's kind of the next step up from our beginner series of control overview. It's kind of just the next step up from basic controls. If you haven't seen that portion already, I encourage you to watch that because we're not going to go over a lot of the basic controls. Now for the beginning here, the first thing we're going to go over is basically center of gravity. A backhoe loader, they're very unstable machines. So you've got a large tool hanging off the back. Again, a smaller front wheelbase there. So these machines, you can get a lot of trouble fairly quickly. So it is very, very, very important to understand center of gravity. So with that said, we're going to go over a few different things here. First is it's going to be driving with center of gravity. I already kind of went over, we don't want to be up high when we're fully loaded. So I went over that in the first with basic controls when we're fully loaded on a bucket. The other is just driving on a slope or going up or down a slope. So in general, when we're approaching a slope, you don't ever want to go up at an angle. So and again, the site I'm at, I don't have some huge location, but what I can show you is I'm approaching this slope right now, and you don't ever want to go up at anything that wouldn't be straight up and down. So like this, it'd be very easy for me to get in a very poor position. So anytime you're approaching a slope, you want to basically go perpendicular to it. So if I back up here, now the other piece to that though, you generally don't want to approach a steep slope and go up and forward, just because this is where the weight on a machine, on a backhoe loader, is on the back. Most of it's in that tool. Depending on what accessory you have up front, if you just have an empty bucket, there's not a lot of weight pulling that down. So you'll see if I try and go up this hill right now, you see how quickly it'd be really easy for me if I keep going, and especially as steeper, that this machine could tip over. Now generally it's going to fall back onto the base of the backhoe there, but it wouldn't be good. So in general, what you're going to want to do, if it's a steep slope that you're trying to go up with a backhoe loader, So I always recommend going up in reverse. You got way more weight in the back. And plus you've got the backhoe or the bucket portion up front. So with this, it's a lot easier to go up in reverse. So depending on the slope on what you're going up, it's a lot easier to go up. Plus I would have my bucket here in front to catch myself. But again, there's really no way you're gonna go up that way. So the best way is always you wanna try and go up in reverse. Now, the other portion is digging on a slope. Obviously in an ideal situation, you wanna have your, you wanna be flat on the ground and have a stable base, but that's not always how it's gonna be. So if you are, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna put this machine at the base of this berm. Again, this is where you wanna be extremely careful. We're bringing it in to get set. So straighten it out, put it in neutral, and then what we wanna do is set that bucket flat on the ground. You don't wanna raise up that front end at all. You just wanna set it there, neutral, and then park. And then we'll flip around to the back side. Okay, so now being set up on an angle here, so first things first, obviously make sure your seatbelt's on. If I didn't go over that in the beginning, especially when you're on a slope, we should be doing anyways. And then I'm bringing these in. Again, I'm not gonna go over, we already went over basic controls here. Now the key on a slope is always lowering your downhill one first. So I'm gonna put that down right above the ground. And then my top side, I'm just gonna get it where it's barely touching the ground because this is gonna eventually, if not even a little bit above. And then all you're doing, you are gonna have full throttle because you're gonna need more power to raise this up. And then I'm just pushing that up. And then that's as far as that'll go. And then bringing that down, just making sure it's stable. So then I'm more at an angle there. It's a lot easier. The machine's a lot more stable. And then the only other thing here is just when you are trenching on a slope, you never want to dump. Take one scoop here. As much as possible, you always want to dump your spoil pile on the uphill side. Couple reasons. One, it's more stable. So I'm going towards that, I'm moving all my weight, my center of gravity over there, so it's a lot more stable. The other thing is if I'm going to the right at all, again, this is where the machine would be a lot easier to tip this thing over. So that's one as I'm dumping up there. The other piece to that is this is a lot easier to backfill. If you're about 2 to 3 feet up the hill, it's gonna be a lot easier to kind of pull that material down and into the trench. So that's digging on a slope and then also where you're putting that material. We're gonna go ahead and pack this thing back up. And then whenever you're ready to come down from this, again, always lower your uphill side first. So bring that down. I still like to leave it above the ground just a little bit. And then I'm slowly bringing down the downhill side. And sometimes I'll actually leave these out a little bit depending on the slope if I want something. I'm not that worried about this slope I'm on right here. So all the way up, and I'm gonna spin this back around. Okay, I'm spinning back around to driving position. I'm slowly pulling back, getting that bucket off the ground. Again, always keeping low and tight as you possible. Parking brake off, and then gently drive off of this. Okay, and that's digging on a slope. Now I've already spun around, I'm ready. The rest of this I want to go over a little is entrenching. So the first thing I want to show you is still going on center of gravity. You really want to make sure you're as low and stable to the ground as you can. So the only thing, the other piece I'll show you is I've already got my outriggers down. You do not want to look like this. So as high, some people take the wheels off the ground, which is fine. I don't think there's a right or wrong strategy on that. But understand the higher you go, the less stable your machine is. So you generally want to keep So I always just touch the ground. So let me get these. So right now I'm off the ground. I'm just touching each, and I'm just feeling it just so it's a little bit off. That also is putting a little bit of downward pressure on my back. But that's all you want to do. Don't go too high. Again, center of gravity, it's always an issue with these. So, okay. I've already unlocked it. Again, a couple things I want to go over for trenching. One of the exercises, I'm going to extend, this is the extended hoe we went over in the first video there. If you didn't see basic controls, it's a foot pedal here that I'm using. Couple things I recommend. There's an exercise called raking. The only way to get really good at trenching is to be able to control that bucket. So what I recommend is finding an area where you can get flat to the ground, get your teeth barely in, and then practicing if you can control the teeth in the ground, keep them touching the ground, but also don't let that bucket, the bottom of the bucket, touch the ground. So as I get to the end here, the only thing I like to show people is I've got that boom all the way up. This is the only issue. When I'm trenching, I don't like to manipulate the extended hoe arm. So this is about how close I can get, and I'll show you on this handheld again, using this, if you can't see. Now, if I pull this up, let me just show you the difference. Because if I pull that up, and I can go down even lower, I want to show you how much further I can come in. I'm still doing the raking. That's all I get. I get like another 6 inches to 12. So that's why I recommend. I really consider the extended hoe portion more for transport because it can actually collapse it all in. I usually just leave it out all the way. Now, the raking, again, is really valuable to practice. If you get good at this is how you're going to do get a flat trench. The other method, sometimes doing this at idle. If you're a newer operator, lowering that throttle so it's not nearly as jerky. Just find a piece of property that you can just, I'm not as good at idle. If you can find an area where you can do that, it's a combination of opening the bucket, and I actually look worse at idle, but this is what you want to practice to get good at. This is the only way you're going to get good at trenching, is being good at being able to control that bucket. So I'm going to throttle back up. Now, generally trenching, you're going to start out as far away. I like to usually want to be in line with the machine because I'm going to show you later how to push this forward. But this is the challenge of a backhoe, is looking over your side there to make sure, basically seeing your arm. Now, in the first video, I might have showed you just going straight in and taking a big scoop. You don't do that. It's good to practice, start one motion, but generally what you want to do is cut it at a 45, and you're basically trying to take off 6 inches to a foot at a time. So it's kind of that same raking exercise, but this time with ground. Edges and backing off a little bit if you can. And then your spoil pile should always be about 2 to 3 feet over. So people have asked me, how do you know how deep you're going? This is where I tell people, well, one, if you have someone, generally on a job site, they'll have someone actually reading grade on there. The other thing I like to do is if I need a, 3-foot trench, just know what your bucket dimensions. Like I know this bucket, I've measured it. It's about 3 feet straight up and down like that. It's about 2 feet when I start going flat. So I can get a good judge on seeing how far the bucket has basically flattened or gone into that hole. Trying to get everything to fall back in the trench so you don't have really dirty edges there. But the key here for trenching is really rolling that bucket and trying to get a nice flat bottom. So that means you want to use those teeth. It's like a knife cutting in there. You're taking off 6 inches to a foot at a time and trying to get a nice flat bottom as much as you can, shaking the material off that falls into the bottom instead of coming up the sides. And just do one more here. And then it's just ideally getting as close as you can. So I can see my whole bottom bucket. I'm probably about 2 feet here. So I'd continue doing this depending how deep the trench needs to go. Now, the only kind of the trick on here is if we're trenching in a long line, I'm not completely done here, but I can still show. To move this machine, you don't necessarily have to spin it around. So if you just set your bucket where that boom is straight up and down, put a little bit of downward pressure, and then all you're doing is pulling those outriggers just a little bit off the ground. And then this is where you're taking your parking brake off. And then I just pull that bucket up just a hair, making sure obviously your wheels are straight where you want to go. And then you're really just pushing yourself forward. Once you've done that, pick that up so you're not supporting yourself there anymore. Drop your bucket. I usually have the parking brake on. Some people, it's different strategies. Some people won't have a parking brake on. Either way. And then I put the outriggers back down, so I'm just barely off the ground, and then I'm right back to it. So that's an easy way if you're doing a long trench, is you can basically do move yourself in a long line just by pushing yourself out. You never have to spin the chair back around. Do one more here. Okay, final piece, we're starting a little bit of backfilling. I showed you in the first, the basic controls, you can backfill with the bucket here. If you do, you generally don't like to use the side of the bucket. It's not great on the swing arm on these. But either way, I'm going to show you how to use the bucket. We're going to, again, you always want to make sure you're retracted all the way. I roll that bucket usually when I'm out. Spin this around, back in. And then same thing we've shown about locking that. This John Deere has that. And I'm locked in. I'm secure there. Okay, spinning back around. Now to backfill, I'm going to put that off the ground. Parking brake off. And then I'm pushing these away, and then spinning back around. So back around, parking brake off, buckets off the ground, and then I'm good to go. Now backfilling with a backhoe, they're not great. I'll tell you right now, it's not an easy machine to backfill with, but I'm gonna go up and just do, for training purposes, get lined up straight, always having your nose pointed to where you're trying to push. And then this is where using, and again, if I use that camera, I know I said this on the other video, but understanding that top edge on your bucket, that is your blade angle. You can't see the front, obviously. So you wanna make sure that you're flat to the ground, bring it down, and just make sure you maintain that as flat as possible. And then you're just trying to drive through it and push that material in there. And then after that, you're raising it up. There is a feature on, I didn't show in the others, this disengages the throttle, or I'm sorry, the transmission. So if I hold that, I can give it gas and I can raise this up faster. So that little button, you gotta keep it held in. That'll disengage the transmission. So it's a handy little feature on there to put it in or out of neutral. And I try and overlap a little bit, getting down flat. And again, throttling it up. So typically then what I would do is I would go in a straight line the other way. And actually, you know what? I probably have enough material there. I'm gonna do it anyways. Again, we're doing this one a little bit faster. You just don't want to let your front tire, go in that soft spot. So I'm trying to get my material further out past the trench, which it's not right now. But I'm going to do it this direction in a straight line. Going flat with it. And you're kind of straddling that trench anyways right now. And I know again, you can't see anything in these, so I know I'm gonna keep going forward just a little bit. And then I wanna try and keep that material beyond it. So then this is where I would just float that blade coming back, dropping that down with that edge, setting that like that, and then backing up. And eventually taking that out of float and letting it drive off. And I would do a few more passes on this, both sides, so. Okay, that's backfilling and floating the blade there at the end. Okay, parking shutdown, final piece. It's fairly simple. Obviously, make sure your bucket is flat to the ground. So you always open this up. You want that bucket flat. Set it down there, nice and gentle, and then we're gonna go ahead and make sure you're neutral. Parking brake on. You generally want to let these things idle down for just a few minutes. Actually 30 seconds to a minute. A lot of times it'll tell you when it's ready to shut down if it's got an auto shutdown on it. Steering wheel up. If you've seen on other videos, if you're gonna store this backhoe for a while, I also recommend opening the bucket in the back so any water doesn't accumulate in it. But the other thing is the outriggers. The outriggers are not secured, whereas the boom arm locks, these don't. So I've seen on job sites where you park it and then over time the outriggers come off. So if you're gonna store for more than a week, I recommend just drop the outriggers so you don't have to worry about that. But after all that is set, while I'm letting it idle down, again, cleaning your machine, you've heard me say this before, you know, it says a lot about an operator on how you take care of your machine. So make sure any trash, anything like that, you're cleaning out at the end of the day. And I'm also just checking fuel, anything that might need to be addressed before the next shift. After that, go ahead and shut it off. After I've shut it off, a lot of times I'll take that right joystick and just push forward. You'll release any pressure that's left in that boom arm, so it's all the way down. 3 points of contact getting out. And then finally, like I say, is I do a quick walk around at the end of the shift. So after you get done, park, make sure you're secure if you need to lower the outriggers, but then I also recommend doing a quick walk around of the equipment, making sure if you note any damage, anything like that, it's better for you to catch it prior to the next shift. Then you're making sure you're fueled and go ahead and secure and lock the machine. Okay, everyone, so that was our long form pre-op to shutdown procedure for our backhoe loader. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please reach out to us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.